was unexpectedly busy today. So I will show you some slides I have prepared. We have prepared the presentation.
Di più vicino al microfono.
Presentation talking about the new challenges for the Italian system. It's a very brief presentation that I will show you now. First of all, I have to thank also the organization of these events, and many thanks for having invited us to take place here in this event. Okay. Just a short presentation regarding Utilitalia. Utilitalia is one of the most important associations of the energy field, but not only, because it's an association representing nearly 500 companies, Italian companies, involved in businesses such as environment, water, and energy business. Of course, Utilitalia represents a lot of the national community. You can see some numbers about it. And we are very proud of mostly representing the local utilities and local energy operators of the country.
So regulated people.
Regulated people, but also not only regulated business, but also market business, because we take care of power distribution, retail, sales, and most of our associated companies are also integrated companies, even if in a local, from a local point of view. Okay, just a few words about our vision. Utilitalia is committed to offer a contribution to reach all the sustainability targets on a European Union level. And we believe, of course, that a reliable medium-long-term strategy to achieve environmental sustainable targets should adequately consider the benefit from technological evolution, enforcing sustainable growth and multi-sectorial approach towards energy sources. Of course, Utilitalia promotes also the efficient investments and consider the technological evolution as a key factor of the energy transition we are going to face in the next years. Let's go straight to the point with these slides, talking about the 2030 targets, the European targets. Of course, there's a strong commitment for Italy, but Italy itself had, for the first time, had a strong commitment, also considering the CEN 2017, in which there were described some ambitious targets at the time. First of all, as you can see on the slide, the total RES targets by CEN 2017 considered 28% of total consumption for renewable energy. While regarding power consumption targets, the CEN already considered 55% of targets to be reached in 2030. Regarding the RES generation, the generation capacity, total generation capacity regarding RES, of course, the target 2030 considers a strong commitment, as told before, because regarding the solar power and the aeolic power, there's it is expected a big increase of the capacity stored and of the energy produced by these two energy renewable sources. In fact, we can say in 2030 there will be a strong increase of the capacity of solar capacity, plus 35 gigawatts. While regarding aeolic capacity, there will be a plus 10 gigawatt to be reached. So the solar capacity installed will have to triplicate, while the wind capacity installed will have to duplicate from the numbers in 2015, from 2015 and 2013. Of course, the Energy and Climate Action Plan 2021-2030 will better clarify the rate of these goals, but for sure there will be a strong commitment for the country. Strong challenges for the system, of course, and already according to SEN 2017, the power market will have to deal with strong power consumption increase in residential and transport uses, decentralized generation and prosumers development, and there will be the necessity of developing new market sources to mitigate the strong RES increase. In particular, we expect the development of new technologies, of course, such as storage systems, demand-side management, smart meters, smart equipments in households. There will be also the necessity of new market remedies, such as capacity market and ancillary services market opening. New infrastructures will be also necessary, of course, in order to improve interconnections between national grids, but also to improve the current capacity of the DSO grids, of the distribution grids. Of course, we are always talking about the PPA, the power purchase agreements, possible long-term contract in order to develop a new RES capacity by an agreement, of course, between producers, traders and consumers to supply green energy on a long-term horizon of 10, 15 years. Of course, in the last time CEO, we are always talking about this topic, and we are not sure if it will be possible to develop enough this tool. Of course, the Italian government decided to support the new RES development still through direct incentives, as usual, until 2021. But in the second time, there will be the necessity of a wider range of tools in order to reach the targets 2030. Okay, a very important topic we would like to underline is the security adequacy challenges that will be required to the national power system. In the last year, the non-programmable RES growth and the programmable thermal plants decrease led to a relevant impact on system cost and flexibility requirements. Also in 2016, we faced some main stress factors that are strongly linked between them. First of all, the progressive increase of congestion hours until 25% of total hours in the year in 2016. This because of a progressive increase of non-programmable RES that led to a consequent pressure on grid constraints. A second stress factor is surely the progressive reduction of the margin reserve, combined with exceptional demand peak. And this factor put the system under potential inadequacy risks in some market areas, especially in the main islands. And the last but not the least, of course, a strong increase of imbalances in ancillary services markets demanded by the TSO term that need to assure a sufficient warm reserve and voltage regulation in this very complex situation, not so easy to reach these targets, of course. So the parallel increase of RES and decrease of thermo is a real challenge for the system. Next slide is about the hydropower plants that we would like not to underestimate. In fact, the hydro energy is still strategically relevant for the national system as a RES baseload to achieve targets 2030 and 2050 also. SEN 2017 already defined some targets for this specific renewable energy. And it was defined the targets of plus 4 terawatt-hour to be developed in order to reach these targets, of course. There are many added values still to consider regarding this renewable source. such as highest RES capacity storage currently in Italy. Is the, as you know, is the renewable energy sources with the highest capacity storage in the country at the moment. Even if in 2013 we expect that the solar power will become the first of the range. There's also a high production rate that hydropower plants can assure if compared with other renewable energy sources. Also a longer life cycle, and the hydropower plants can also assure to the system a lot of flexibility and security. In fact, the hydro is the only programmable, relatively programmable RES, and can play an active role in ancillary services markets. CEN 2017 underlined the necessity of new investments in order to avoid the rapid decline of the total installed capacity and loss of production of hydropower plants. This is a very worrying factor because, of course, if the hydropower plant capacity installed decreases, there will be a lot of problems in order to reach the targets, the total targets about RES in 2030. Furthermore, there's also another important factor to consider about hydro, and it's about the hydro storage. That is still the easiest storage technology currently available. Just because in Italy there are some hydro pump storages that could be developed and could play an important role for the market, especially in ancillary market services. They could assure short-term availability for primary reserve requirements, high performances in down-up ramps, and their contribution to peak demand, assuring system adequacy. Okay, this part of the presentation is focused on a downstream approach, because we think that a good way in facing all the challenges regarding the energy transition should take into consideration not only upstream and wholesale markets issues, but also downstream market issues. First of all, we would like to talk about the smart grid and energy communities, and about a new possible role for the DSO and final customers. Of course, we are not sure that it will happen, but we believe that the DSOs could change their role in the near future, because there's a strong increase of the distributed generation, there's a strong increase of demand-side management and prosumers. Also the use of the power storage that is many times faced in the public debate could involve also the DSOs. And of course, there's a strong policy commitment to promote the local energy communities at the moment. And this topic is strongly linked to the DSO matters. Furthermore, the consultation held by the Senate Industry Commission last October suggested many issues related to local energy communities promotion. And I reported some question marks still to be solved, I would say. Could local community disconnect from DSO grids? How to handle general charges? Who will handle security adequacy matters if not DSOs? How to keep local consumers freedom to choose any supplier out of local community? Many questions that the policymaker will try to answer. However, it's sure that in the near future will be required a new metering models in order to offer right price consumption signals to the final customers, more reliability, quality, and security of the distribution grids. And there will also be a need of active reactive energy modulation on market basis to reach local grid efficiency security. And finally, also an active participation role of final customer prosumers in energy dispatching markets through dynamic pricing, real-time information, and the possibility to reduce energy expenses. Another important topic is smart cities. Synergies could be led by the local utilities. I reported a typical scheme of a classical smart city, and of course you can see that the multi-utilities could express their role in a strong way, because they are very linked to the territory, they are very close to the final consumers, and they could coordinate all the requirements to build up a smart city. But of course are needed many further aspects to be developed, such as a new regulatory framework to define new rules for participation of local actors and the relative supervision, new responsibilities, new duties, new rights for all the stakeholders involved. There will be the need of additional infrastructures and widespread and economically sustainable communication tools to deal with the new automation control system for local grids. And the last but not the least, new technologies to modulate the generation consumption on local grid level and to provide with the right level of flexibility on production and consumption point of view. So it's a very important challenge, and we will see in the next year the possible development of these tools. Okay, this is the final slide. Some brief key messages of these reflections. In our opinion, the low carbon targets would be incomplete without a downstream approach based on smart cities as a main promoter of the innovation process. Efficiency, sustainability, interoperability of different sustainable energy sources are key messages of the energy transition. And the reference model is not a progressive disconnection from the grids, but an improvement of DSO multi-utilities operational capabilities by adequate investments in innovative tools. An up-to-date enforcement of the remuneration scheme will be relevant for DSO's multi-utilities, and output-based remunerations, premium penalty systems, experimental pilot projects could be possible solutions. Of course, the role of regulation is basically important in supporting investments with a real added value, and the cooperation between policymakers and the local association will play a basic role in smart city success. Many thanks.
Thank you. Question marks, specific challenges underlined, so I think there is room for questions and answers at the end of the session, and I kindly ask you to take note of the questions that you may have in your mind. Now I suggest the floor is yours, and so we are ready to pay attention to your lesson. I have to tell
No lesson, no.
I have to tell the people that
Thank you.
Stato has been my maestro, so my predecessor also as Italian regulator, and not only, and please.
I have to learn how to move this thing here. Okay. Too much. Okay, thank you very much, Alessandro. No, I am. Thank you. This week, no? How do Colarullo prossimo? This one, this is. No, perché non so. Ci vado sopra questo. Thank you very much. Yes, no, I am not in condition to deliver a lecture. I'm only pointing at some critical issues. Given the fact that we have a big, important transformation in the system that will impose revision of many beliefs that we have and many habits that we have taken. I think that this need comes from the interaction of new political objectives, basically reducing emissions and developing renewables, but at a reasonable cost for society. And the system is changing, not only the objectives, but the system is changing due to this diffusion of decentralized generation, the fact that the renewables are intermittent, most renewables are intermittent, and the fact that as a consequence of this we need to change the grids, which have to be much stronger, multi-directional, meshed, and smart. So this requires a revision, and I can spend a few minutes only pointing at 4 issues, just to select some issues that require some new thinking. So this is just an arbitrary selection of issues. 1, unbundling, something that it is absolutely absent in today's discussion, but which has been at the heart of the debates for 2 decades, the last decades of the past century and the first decade of this century. So this is somehow surprising and requires some reflection. Liberalization has been strictly linked to the idea of unbundling the networks, to allow for markets to develop, to provide fair conditions to competitors. Well, basically, this was a big fight which is traced in the series of the 3 packages of European directives, the first 3 packages. And it was carried on much in a stronger way in the transmission networks than in the distribution networks, so that ownership separation was at the end achieved in a good share of the European transmission network. It was never really pursued at the level of the distribution networks, except in the Netherlands. So we had a mixed, we reached an equilibrium, and the equilibrium is being changed now because the distribution networks are becoming much more important, since the new distributed generation will be connected, at least half of it, to the distribution networks. At the same time, the issue is absent. So I raised the question, have all of us been fooled for fighting for 2 decades for something that was irrelevant? Or is it that the need for separation was present at the time, but it is less present today due to something that has changed in the habits, in the laws, in the practice, and in the presence of a regulatory system? Or what? What is it that makes this issue irrelevant? Second issue. We need a European system, and therefore we need a very highly integrated and consistent network for electricity and the same for gas. This is necessary. While at the same time, we need a common regulatory apparatus, of course. We need markets are unified, the power exchanges are getting larger and extended. So the regulatory system has to have a European reference to the European space. This is difficult for both, for the networks and for the regulators. In particular, the unitary strategy and management of the transmission long-distance networks has been recognized and also institutionalized with the clean energy package. So that now we have ENSO, E and ENSOG having a status in the public system, being association of companies, prevailingly private-owned companies, they have a status. This is a big change. It is probably absolutely crucial to having a consistent system with a coherent growth path for new investment, and also a consistent system of managing and running the network. With a similarly unified regulatory apparatus due to the existence and work of ACER, which has limited powers, but which in fact looks succeeding in providing convergence of the attitudes of the national regulatory authorities. How about the distribution networks? Are we going to have the association of the distribution network operators assuming a similar institutionalization in the next round of directives? Question mark. And then having been a regulator, I cannot forget that we always need some counterweight or countervailing power. When we have a public function entrusted to private companies, even if they have a special status, special duties, and special system of overlooking by the regulators, they still are private companies. So is this a balanced situation, or do we need something to reinforce the defense of the public interest? When crucial decisions are entrusted to associations of private companies. Third issue, congestion. We have had a striking presentation of the congestions in Italy, but congestion do not happen in Italy only. We have congestions all over the place, and congestions are dealt with, are inevitable up to a point. They can be reduced by investment, but they cannot be eliminated, so they have to be managed. They are usually managed through market-friendly or market-oriented instruments like explicit or implicit auctions, market coupling or similar systems, but they only apply to intra-zonal contracts, not to transactions inside zones. So it is crucial how large zones are, because if zones are very large, you have an increasing amount of congestion cases that are not treated in a market-compatible way, and which increase system costs. This is an issue that has been noted by ACER in their reports. The amount of cost for the European system has been estimated and is not terribly high now. It is something, I think, in the order of magnitude of 150 million euros per year. But it is still increasing, so we better think about that. because it could get much higher in the years ahead. And of course, here the crucial point is that zones are not standard sites. They do not have a standard size. And particularly the German zones approach, the German approach to zones is to have them very large, which increases the opaque area of congestions and an opaque way of managing them. Fourth and last issue has been already described with respect to the Italian system. But again, I think it is a European issue. The connection to the grid is costly. It is becoming increasingly costly if the grids become increasingly costly themselves. Smart grids are more costly than old type grids. And they are new, so it is new investment that has to be depreciated, and someone has to pay for that. On top of that, in many countries, not only in Italy, we think that we are exceptional on this, but we are not. We are loading up the cost of subsidizing renewables on the network costs, because that is the easy way to collect money. But this is making opting out of the connection attractive, increasingly attractive, and technology is making it increasingly cheap to do, to enforce. And this is a social problem, because there we have social costs corresponding to social services provided by the network, the insurance against accidents, against failure, temporary failure of the generating apparatus in a zone, in an area, or in a place. So people opting out create a problem of who pays for the renewal of this network system, who pays for the subsidies that will be necessary for some time longer, and which will be the position of the consumers or consumer cooperative alliances or whatever that opt out. And of course they will be tempted to opt out to skip the burden of the costs while maintaining some sort of insurance in case of necessity. So that it is not clear that there is and there will be coincidence between the costs and benefits of the connection or the status of not being connected. So I believe that this has to be faced, and of course one partial but very elementary remedy here is that some of these charges that are presently allocated on the network cost and which correspond to a general interest like subsidies to the increase of renewables should be shifted to the tax system, which of course can be done without increasing the overall tax pressure if in the tax pressure you include the quasi-taxes that are the compulsory payments called otherwise. But this is my last issue for the discussion. Thank you very much.
Really at the end, so there is no time for my personal intervention, but before to give the floor to a couple of questions and answers if possible, let me just underline some of the aspects raised by the three speakers and particularly by my friend Pippo Ranci. He was inserting our team in the frame of the European situation. And I think that this is very important indeed, because who is dealing with energy system have absolutely to consider that we are in front of very interconnected, interlaced systems. And the European one, the European Union, but the European large, Europe large, southeast of Europe, for instance, and the Mediterranean. And I underline this aspect because once we take care about rules, legislation and rules, we have to keep in mind this aspect. And I'm very proud to say that, I'm very happy to say, because it was not my initiative at that time, that in 2000, the Italian regulator promoted the establishment of the first council of the European regulators autonomously, without any directives, understanding, having clear in mind the fact that it's impossible to regulate a single national market without taking care about the interconnections, physical interconnection or market interconnection, hardware and software if you want, with all the other surrounding nations and systems. And today, we still are, I think this is a major challenge, we still are far from the single market. I remember in the '88, I had the opportunity at that time, last century, 30 years ago, to discuss the very first working paper issued by the law at that time, trying to design at that time the single market, and always during the debates to the Commissioner Cardoso e Cunha at that time, I continuously ask, I continue to use a very simple slogan: if you want to give us a single market, you have symmetrically to give us single rules. No doubt. Market is not a savannah, white savannah need rules. So if you have single market, single rules. So go on with the harmonization system process. But in the 90 directive transit, okay, then 96, 98, the first directive for electricity and gas. Then the 2003 other directives in establishing also the need for each country to activate a national regulator. And then in the 2009, the third package, activating ACER, and now in front of us the package of 2016. And the 2016, we are in the 2018, has been approved, of this package has been approved just 4 of the regulators and directives, because still we have to see the implementation of the regulators concerning emergency. Today we are still waiting to see implemented this, and the trilogue did not succeed to get an agreement concerning the market design and ACER, for instance. So we are late. We are very late inside Europe in going towards the single market. And certainly one of the points has been raised by Pippo Ranci. The unbundling issue is so elemental, so basic. to clarify what is a natural monopoly or technical monopoly and what is the market. We are still there. We did something for the transmission system, but the so famous compromise practically left the situation like it was, because in Europe we have what I call in Italian slang, if you want, arlecchinata, no? Of system, because we have ownership and bundling, ITO or ISO, a la carte. Each nation can adopt the solution desired. And now, for the DSO, here we are, big challenges. And this is not just for electricity, as you know, it's also for gas. So, an additional aspect are the national regulators and the, let's say, the European system. If the market needs rules, of course, if you need rules, you need regulators. So simple. But if you need regulators, you have to define, as the directive of 2003 tried to define, the mission and the characteristics. If you go to this aspect, mission and characteristic, and you make a survey, an updated survey about the situation of national regulators around Europe, you will find that we have an heterogeneous situation concerning, therefore, the governance. So I think that we have also in front of us the challenge to harmonize the role, the characteristic, and the missions of the national regulators. But not just those, but the full governance of the energy system. Commission. In Commission, we have, dealing with energy, 2 commissioners. Not just one. We have Mr. Sescovic, Union of Energy, portfolio, and Canete, the Spanish one, Climate and Energy. Then, dealing with energy, you have the Commissioner for Environment, the Commissioner for Consumers, the Commissioner for Competition, the Commissioner for Enlargement, and, of course, the Commission or the responsible of foreign policy, because energy, as you know, is very much connected with the foreign policy. Think about the gas. So also we need, this is one of the major challenges, the appropriate governance for the energy system, for the energy market, particularly, if you want. And also, as far as concerned, not just the national regulatory authorities, but also the organization that we have created autonomously, spontaneously, to work together. And now we have ACER, and also the very last discussion still was dealing with the structure, with the role of ACER, the agency, as you know, for the collaboration of energy regulators. So we still have in front of us challenges concerning the governance. And finally, now to the question, if we have time for some question, something concerning Italy. Italy, in front of us, we have, first of all, the final design as far as concerned the so-called mercato tutelato and the role acquirente unico, because in my opinion we are still in the cloud over there. Second, the fiscalizzazione degli oneri di sistema, to decide where to put the oneri di sistema, the para-fiscal collection included in the bills for the consumers, in order understand if, in connection with the fact that we reach now 17 billion of euro per year, how to deal with this issue, because it's certainly disturbing the competition, it's certainly having some sound of injustice, and certainly is an obstacle for the competitivity of the companies using energy, etc. And finally, very final, my mind is a very personal opinion, is some more consideration to the privatization and to the question of conflict of interest in Italy. So once you have, as consumer position, once in the bill you have a conflict of interest of this government, it's very difficult to have a very important policy taking care about the interest of the consumers. Because if the government is getting money from the bill because taxes, because only system, and because dividends of the companies belonging to the state, I wonder how a Minister of Industry or a Minister of Treasury could get up the morning and looking at the mirror, he said to himself, today, you know what I want? I will try to cut the cost for the consumers. It's impossible for him. It's a conflict of interest. So here again, liberalization and privatization. And here again, the big important role of the regulators, being independent, autonomous, of course, under control of the administrative justice and so on. Sorry to keep you so long with this conclusion, but I wonder if, do we have a place for a couple of questions? Who is responsible of the... is anxious to put the question a person that is Mr. Kotevic.
Well, the question is just a comment.
A question to?
No, is a comment that my feeling is that everyone is speaking of the so-called grid parity, that is a nonsense if you don't have another pricing. In Germany, they've got grid parity on the Baltic Sea. If you consider the cost of transmission for this specific 7,000 megawatt, you have to add 85 euro per megawatt hour only for that, without the balancing cost and so on. So in the regulation and so on, we have to consider it. In my opinion, the big scope of regulation is to provide the cheapest solution that reach the goal with the minimum cost. And in my opinion, there are a lot of things that are not like that. Just consider domestic distributed generation. We are giving 50 or 65% of capex, just no cost, as Pippo has mentioned, for the transmission and distribution system, and just the scambio supposto. That is, and this is costing 3 times of a small 400 kilowatt plant close to a secondary station, because do you know what is the average efficiency of the houses, because you cannot reorient the houses of the changing inclination, is less than 60%. So why have we to pay 3 times the cost of the kilowatt hour for the country with respect to give? So also in the incentives to type of investment is very fundamental. And what I see is a balance between geography and time. Because my friends of Terna, they know to build a transmission line in Europe, it takes between 10 and 15 years, depending and excluding those lines that have never been done, because the time would be infinite. So this is a key issue for the regulators. How to balance the geography, just nodal pricings, just the type of investment, and the time to reach that. An interconnector I was in Chesi, a young boy, 35 years ago for the France-Italy interconnector that is going now. Just all the other things. So this is the key issue. And who is responsible? The last example. Do you know in Germany the past year, for 25 days, they had injected in the network less than 8% of the total capacity of wind plus solar, that is more than 100. They save themselves because they are exporting a lot of energy, so they have stopped export. What we do is responsible the authority of regulation if the majority of people remains with no electricity, or is responsible, my friend, the TSO, or the government?
Or the government.
This is
the point.
This is
a good
and this
question.
is a key issue.
It's clear that is not clear.
And this I agree with you that
Because
are
we see
key issues
now
to be
the increasing
analyzed.
quantity of decrease involving, as sentito or advice of the regulators, in decrease that should be, on the contrary, a decision of the regulator himself. So, invasion of roles.
Now we have to stop. I have the
Thank you,
section.
thank you to you for your patience and assistance.
Piacere di